Inputs in the short run and the long run. Okay, before we had different ways of dividing up different types of inputs. We talked about land, labor, and capital. Now we're going to take our inputs and think of them falling into a little bit different type of categorization. We're going to talk about two different types of inputs, fixed inputs and variable inputs. And we're going to assume that all inputs fall into one of these two categories. Fixed inputs are inputs whose size does not change with the level of output. This would be something like a factory or farmland. Variable inputs are inputs that vary with the level of output. If we want to produce more, we have to use more of the variable inputs. That would be things like raw materials and labor. Okay, let's go over this in a little bit more detail. Let's say we buy a farm. We can plant a lot of seeds and do a lot of work and use a lot of fertilizer on that land. Or we can only use a little bit of seed and fertilizer and get a lower yield, or we can do nothing at all with the land. No matter what level of output we choose to have, the size of the farm does not change. The farm size is a fixed input, and fixed inputs do not vary with the level of output. The farm is the same size whether it produces nothing or a lot. Variable inputs, on the other hand, are different. Notice that we can plant a lot of seeds per acre, use a lot of fertilizer, and put in a lot of labor and get a high yield. So we can use a lot of those things. Or we can use few of those inputs and get a low yield. So the amount of the crop we get depends on how many seeds and how much fertilizer and labor we use. These are examples of variable inputs. Variable inputs vary with the level of output. Okay, here's another example. We have a factory. It has a particular size. That's the fixed input. And we're stuck with that factory size, whether we produce a little bit or a lot. But if we do produce a lot, we're going to use a lot of workers and we're going to use a lot of raw materials. But if we don't produce much, we'll use few workers and few materials. So how much we produce does depend on the number of workers or materials. But you might be asking, can't we just build a bigger factory if we want to produce more? Isn't that what companies do when they want to expand? And that's true, but it takes a long time to build a bigger factory. While we can hire or fire workers fairly quickly, at least compared to building a new factory. And we can buy more raw materials quickly as well. Now, there might be some contractual issues in there. Maybe you can't do it tomorrow, but you can certainly do it in a shorter term than building a new factory. So, in the long run, fixed inputs are just like variable inputs. Over a long period of time, we could build a bigger factory. But in the short run, the fixed inputs are truly fixed. However much we want to produce tomorrow, we're stuck with a particular factory size. And that factory size will stay the same no matter how much we produce. This brings up a timing distinction in our model of production that's truly important for the rest of the course. The difference between the short run and the long run. In the short run, this is the time period during which at least one input is fixed. In the long run, all inputs are variable. You can change the size or level you use of anything. And this definition works both ways. If there is a fixed input, we are in the short run. Likewise, if we're in the short run, at least one input is fixed, just like we have the factory over there to the right of these sentences. But if no inputs are fixed, we are in the long run. And If we are in the long run, all inputs are variable. You can see over to the right there, picture of constructing a new and bigger factory. Another way to look at the difference between the short run and the long run is in firm planning scenarios. In the short run, you're formulating your business plan for the next few months or the quarter or something like that. How much are we going to produce over the next 3 months? During that period, you can't change the size of your factory. But if you're formulating some sort of a 10-year financial plan, maybe you're putting together a plan to go to the bank and get a loan, you can play around with different factory sizes in that plan. So you can analyze different levels of output over various factory sizes. In effect, you're treating the size of your factory as variable. You can have any size factory you want in a long enough time horizon. That is, in the long run. In the next few lectures, we're going to use this distinction between the type of inputs, fixed and variable, and the time frames, long run versus short run, to develop production functions describing the relationship between inputs and outputs. And then we're going to use what we learned about production to develop cost functions describing the level of output and the costs we incur in the long run and the short run.